The American Clearinghouse on Educational Facilities is pleased to host today's webinar. For those of you attending your first ACEF webinar, ACEF is the Educational Facilities Clearinghouse funded by the U.S. Department of Education, established to provide technical assistance, training, and resources to public early childhood schools, K-12 schools, and institutions of higher education. ACEF provides resources on facility planning, design, financing, construction, improvement, operation, and maintenance. If it is not your first time to join an ACEF webinar, welcome back. Please know that ACEF is here to support you beyond today's webinar, and we invite you to follow ACEF online at acefacilities.org. During today's webinar, the ACEF staff will be available to assist all participants. At the conclusion of today's session, we will provide a list of upcoming events and recently released publications. We encourage you to visit the site for future updates as well. Before we start our session, I want to make mention of a few important details that will enhance your webinar experience. Please make note of the many interface options available on your SABA Centra screen. Participants may reply yes or no in response to the presenter, laugh, applaud, and step out. You may raise your hand for questions, but we would prefer you send your questions through text chat. The text chat button will allow you to send questions to the presenter throughout the presentation. The speaker has an allotted time later in the webinar to address questions that the audience may have. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you take this opportunity to learn from the content presented, engage with the speaker, and add to your professional knowledge of issues related to educational facilities. We are excited to have Mindy Sitton and Tony Chanowski joining us today for this webinar entitled School Security Technology Infrastructure, Determining Needs and Making Plans. Mindy Sitton is an educational security consultant. Ms. Sitton is also a certified educator who uses her expertise to provide professional development to educators on effective integration of technology into learning environments. Tony Chanowski is a registered telecommunications project manager and registered communication distribution designer. His areas of expertise include physical security systems, electronic access control, intrusion detection, video surveillance, cabling infrastructures, and fiber optic systems. During his career, Tony has assisted and led various security projects for schools, universities, prisons, and hospitals. Welcome, Ms. Sitton and Mr. Chanowski, and thank you for sharing your expertise with our audience today.
Good morning, and thank you. So we're going to get started on webinar one of this webinar series, and today we'll discuss school security technology infrastructure with regards to determining needs and planning. The second webinar, which will be held later in the series, will address specific security technology systems and infrastructure. Although we'll touch on those things today, the next seminar will go in more depth on the actual systems and infrastructure needed. Okay, the overview for today will include a layered approach to school security, commonly used security technologies and systems, technology infrastructure required to support these systems, and determining needs for school security. And we'll touch on new construction and existing facilities, as there is a difference in the approach. Assessing the security in the new construction is a lot of predictive and design philosophies. And an existing system, you're not only assessing the existing technology systems that are in place, but you are also assessing threats and vulnerabilities based on historical data. We'll also discuss implementing a plan for security technology and the associated infrastructure, and addressing district-wide equity. Okay, in a layered approach, we're talking about three primary layers: the natural, human factors, and physical security. So on this slide, we'll talk about the natural. In the natural, we'll discuss a lot of CPTED principles, which CPTED stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. CPTED is a set of design principles used to discourage crime. It's a fairly simple concept. Much like buildings and properties are designed to prevent damage from the force of elements and natural disasters, these buildings should also be designed to prevent crime. So using CPTED principles, we'll base designs on anticipating the thought process of potential offenders and trying to create an environment that discourages follow-through of these potential offenders. CEPTED also has the benefit of creating a sense of security and well-being among faculty, staff, and other visitors. When CEPTED principles are used in building design, the environment will often discourage or impede criminal behavior. At the same time, honest people, it will encourage honest people to keep a watchful eye. So some of the principles are natural surveillance, which are really monitoring activities which help in the detection of illegitimate users. Surveillance really could be a natural, standby and observers, faculty, staff. It could be organized staff, which are security guards and personnel, or mechanical, which are security cameras, video management systems, recording systems, those types of things. Surveillance, especially on the natural side, decreases the anonymity of illegitimate users and maximizes feelings of safety for other faculty and staff and the visitors. In natural access control, really there are building design features in the facility that guide legitimate users through a space, makes it a little bit more intuitive to go to the right locations. It highlights entrances and exits, and it denies offenders access to different areas. Territorial reinforcement are well-designed physical features which should clearly mark and delineate private, semi-private, and public spaces, so people know these spaces that they're allowed to go into. This really clarifies ownership of different areas and helps in the detection of illegitimate users in a timely fashion. Then management and maintenance are very important. So in these spaces, if it's a well-managed and maintained area, there's a enhanced feeling of safety. It reduces illegitimate use and increases legitimate use. Management and maintenance indicate ownership and guardianship of the space. So just one example of CEPTED would be like a school entry, a glass entry in a vestibule. Has a lot of visual communication. It has a clear pathway definition, and really a properly designed and maintained entry should minimize visual obstructions. That includes posters that students sometimes like to put on windows. All of those should be removed, and the space should be maintained to have a clear visual communication between the inside and outside of different spaces. Okay, then we'll talk about the human factor. Human factor, really talking about human behavior, and understanding human behavior is a critical basis to a good security program. This includes a clear understanding of appropriate behavior in a particular area or space, as well as understanding and discouraging inappropriate behavior. All spaces should have a designated purpose and should support and control the desired behavior. So the three categories we'll discuss here are designation. So there should be some type of designation clearly defining the purpose of the space, and does the design of the space support the intended purpose. Also definition. So is the space clearly defined, and is it clear who owns that space and maintains it? Are the borders of the space clearly defined? Are administrative rules clear and reinforced through policy and management of staff? And then does the physical design support the intended function of that space? These are all critical things in space planning up front on a project. Human awareness and training. It's critical that building administrators and staff are educated and trained to be aware and recognize normal users, people that are desired to be inside that space, as well as abnormal users, people that really should not be in that space. Policies and procedures are very important so that building occupants, administrators, staff, and visitors know exactly what to do and who to contact when potential liability is identified. Behavioral objectives. It is not adequate to just name the purpose of the space, but it's important that a good security program will identify what do we want to occur there, what do we not want to occur there, and that often can help to be identified if there's a threat assessment conducted on the space or facility. Community and culture. Behavior in an educational environment is greatly impacted by the community and culture outside the facilities or campus, as well as the community and culture within the facility or campus. So human factors really help support the other two layers of physical and natural, and I think at the end of this we'll kind of tie those things together. And the next layer is the physical security layer. Physical security describes measures that are taken to deny unauthorized access to a facility. While many security planners and designers combine all layers into physical security, we want to illustrate why these should be thought of as separate layers. A properly designed facility utilizing the CEPTED principles that we've talked about can drastically reduce the need for active systems for surveillance and access control. In the process of assessment and planning, it's important that active security technology is not solely correcting bad design, but instead enhancing security, enhancing communications, and awareness. Physical security layer will include, but not be limited to physical and mechanical barriers, meaning walls, fences around a perimeter, lockers, secure doors, security glazing, vehicle barriers, so the vehicles and drivers know exactly where they should and shouldn't drive. Security forces, meaning personnel, either guards, patrol, or trained watchmen. Artificial lighting, security lighting, because that discourages bad behavior in a well-lit area. Hardened construction, which are reinforced wall construction, concrete, steel, those types of things. Okay, the technology layer. So we'll review standard security technologies that are used across the country in educational facilities. These technologies are interwoven with other layers of the security to enhance the overall effectiveness of a complete security plan. So the technology layer really includes things like access control. We're talking about card readers, an access control system, proximity readers, biometric readers, keypads, combination readers, intrusion protection, or sometimes referred to as intrusion detection systems. These monitor the status of doors, windows, roof scuttles. They have motion detectors. Oftentimes they have audible or visual alarm systems. And these systems are generally monitored by a third-party UL-listed monitoring service, which is usually a 24/7 service. So when the system is alarmed, there's a party monitoring it. Panic alarms and notifications. Sometimes these are fixed, meaning to rest button under a reception desk or in a principal's office. There are also now portable and wireless solutions that are tied to your Wi-Fi system. These are generally tied to notification type systems that can trigger a number of events depending on what the facility wants. Oftentimes these trigger a lockdown event as well. CCTV recording and monitoring systems. These are often nowadays referred to as IP video management systems. And these include cameras, monitors, recording systems. They can include analog and or IP-based cameras or systems. There are enterprise, like district-wide type systems, or standalone within an individual campus. And oftentimes there's interconnectivity or integration to some of the other systems we mentioned, like intrusion detection or access control. Also, visitor management systems. These are sometimes subscripted databases, like the Raptor system used in Texas. These systems can create visitor badges and or an audit list of visitors with date and time, so we can go back and find out when somebody came into a building or left. And they also provide visual notice with the badges that a guest has been through the office, which is important. Then communications. These are sometimes one-way or two-way communications, maybe through the paging system or through a two-way system in classrooms. They can be two-way radio systems, cell phones, mass text notifications. There are a lot of options using technology these days. Okay, infrastructure layer. So really, it's very important to design, when designing a technology system, you have a properly designed infrastructure to support it. These include wired networks, or often referred to as cabling, voice data cabling systems, wireless networks, which can be distributed antennas, cellular systems, or more often nowadays, Wi-Fi systems, server capacity, data storage, and maintenance, which are really the servers that maintain and archive all of the data, whether that's access control data, video management data, or video storage solutions. So it's important that there's a holistic building block approach that the planner captures for the current and future needs when implementing a security plan. It should be a very scalable plan, that meets the needs of today and tomorrow, or if it's budget restricted, we capture priority 1 items, and then we have a plan to add priority 2 and 3 items. Okay, also in the infrastructure layer, critical resiliency and redundancy are very important. So many systems that support a network infrastructure are designed to be more resilient and resistant to failure. For example, even though in addition of a UPS is an uninterruptible power supply, so battery backup system, it will provide power backup and more resistance to power fluctuations. But if we put in 2 of them, then if one UPS fails, the other one is complete redundancy. Because if the first UPS fails, and that's the only one we have, the network will go down if there's a power failure and then UPS fails or goes beyond the battery life cycle. If there were a redundant UPS, like I said, then it would automatically fail over to the next UPS, and the network would continue to be online and would be uninterrupted and would continue to support the core technology and security systems. Some of the things that really should be considered in the planning process are resilient and redundant power, resilient and redundant data connectivity, which a properly designed data network will have, redundant data storage. Wired connectivity is still more reliable than wireless. Resilient and redundant IP, internet-based connectivity, that's really talking about the wide area network coming into the building. Fiber optic systems, which provide a high-speed connectivity between your systems. Virtual redundancy and physical redundancy. Oftentimes these are in your servers will have redundancy, such as RAID, where if one drive fails, all the data can still be captured on a second drive. And fail secure on your door locking hardware. Okay, then I'm going to hand over the next set of slides to Mindy Sitton.
Okay, so Tony led us through the different layers of security and why each one is important and kind of what each layer is focused upon and designed to do. And hopefully you have a sense now of why it's important when you begin to look at planning for security to examine all 4 layers and take them into consideration. But now we're going to talk about how do you begin to develop a comprehensive security plan that identifies needs and goals and strategies in each of the 4 layers. In the slide in front of you now, you'll see a 6-step planning process, and this is taken from the Guide for Developing High-Quality School Emergency Operations Plans, released by the administration in June 2013, and it was developed by the Department of Education in collaboration with the U.S. Departments of Homeland Security, led by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Justice Department, led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Health and Human Services. This guide actually provides planning principles and processes, as well as threat and hazard-specific annexes, and a 6-step process for schools in collaboration with local community partners to develop or enhance emergency operations plans. That was actually the main purpose of this guide. However, we are also saying you can take this guide, you can take these same 6 steps and utilize this process in proactively planning for security. One of the reasons for this is that this guide can help schools align emergency planning practices with those at the national, state, and local levels, and it can be used on an ongoing basis. If you're needing help with the planning process, one good resource is the RIM Center, or the Readiness and Emergency Management for Schools Technical Assistance Center. And they have an excellent resource, and it's entitled Supporting K-12 Schools and Higher Ed Emergency Management. That can be found at http://rems.ed.gov. So again, those are some resources. That's the background for this. let's talk a little bit more about the specifics of the plan or the planning process. So you're going to want to form a collaborative planning team. And one of the key factors of this team is you're going to want it to be a multidisciplinary team, pulling in people from different parts of the district that have different roles and responsibilities, different backgrounds, different areas of expertise. And this team is going to work through all 6 steps of the planning process. And that's going to basically be to develop the plan, to do a comprehensive review of existing plans, and conduct reviews of the plan components. Each step in the process is designed to improve the school's response to ongoing school and emergency activities, as well as training, drills, identification of equipment and resources that are currently in use. And the steps are sequenced in order to support a collaborative process that invites multiple perspectives for information gathering, prioritizing, goal setting, and execution, and then finally evaluation. It's intended to be cyclical and ongoing. This is not a one-time planning process. And although you will see steps broken out into 6 separate components, many times the activities are actually cyclical and ongoing, as well as interconnected. So effective planning for school security requires, as I said, a multidisciplinary collaborative team. Members of the team should include end users, and that will include people in the school or on the campus that will actually be utilizing the different security techniques. It will include your IT department, facilities personnel, and other stakeholders that may have an important perspective to add to the planning process. It's going to be important to fully define the task at hand and identify kind of the scope of work for the planning process. What is it that needs to be accomplished in relation to security? And what is the status of the building in relation to security currently? The team is going to want to clearly identify the goals and objectives for security for the particular project. And based on the identification of the goals and objectives, that will form the plan, the basis of the plan. And the team will create a plan or design that will be able to meet the identified goals and objectives in an effective and efficient way. The next step that the team will engage in will be to plan, prepare, review, and seek whatever necessary approval may be needed in order to implement the plan. And then finally, the last step is to actually implement the plan as well as to maintain the plan. And part of plan maintenance is going to be to go back and evaluate the effectiveness of the implementation itself. Now, when it comes to new construction, security design should be a primary consideration. And actually, it's a primary consideration with existing buildings and renovations as well. But if the multidisciplinary team is involved in design planning from the very beginning of new construction projects, then priorities for security can be established really day one. This helps to prioritize funding for security in the budget development process for construction. With new construction, the identification of solutions and the development of a security plan can actually be fairly straightforward. And that's another reason why the involvement of the multidisciplinary team is critical here. The team should be involved in the design process to help ensure that the design addresses critical security issues through all 4 layers of security: the natural, the physical, the human factors, as well as the technology. Now, with existing buildings and renovations, it can be a little trickier sometimes. The team may be involved in designing solutions that are designed to address some maybe existing gaps in technology that are present for existing buildings and renovations compared to some newer construction within the district. And again, this is why it's critical to have the multidisciplinary team involved from the very beginning. And in determining your needs for school security technology, as Tony mentioned, you're going to want to consider two things: the security technology itself, as well as the necessary infrastructure to support that technology. So you're going to want to develop a thorough understanding of the current situation related to the security technology, and that will include an assessment of the current level of both the technology itself as well as the current level of the infrastructure that will be needed to support not only the current technology, but perhaps any additional security technology you wish to add. One part of the planning process and the identification of goals and objectives is to determine your needs. One means of doing this is through threat and vulnerability assessments. A threat and vulnerability assessment will include comprehensive hazard or natural threats, as well as man-made threats, along with a vulnerability assessment. It will also include the identification of preventative and mitigating strategy and the establishment of appropriate priorities. The identification of the prevention and mitigation strategies can help to ensure that your security program is comprehensive and effective. This is actually just a comprehensive picture of what a threat and vulnerability assessment process looks like. It basically involves identifying your assets, identifying the potential hazards and threats, as well as potential methods of action for man-made threats. That could include things like theft or burglary or internal sabotage, as well as some of the more, critical threats that we see today, such as even going as far as active shooters. Then based on that identification, you look at the assets, the potential methods of action in relation to the vulnerability to that threat. Given your current security program, given the current situation, how vulnerable are your assets to each of those potential threats? Based on that, you'll identify recommendations for implementation designed to reduce the risk to those assets, and then you'll implement those recommendations, and then once again you're going to go back and evaluate to see if those recommendations have actually done what they were designed to do in mitigating threats. So these assessments can help to prevent incidences from actually occurring on campuses, and they can also help to ensure that damage or loss of property is minimized should such incidents occur. Most importantly, these assessments can help to prevent or lessen injury or loss of life to members of the campus community. They can help schools and districts to develop or improve disaster recovery and business continuity efforts in the case an incident occurs. And this is where some of Tony's discussion about the need for redundancy and resiliency of systems comes into play. And finally, these assessments, can help schools and districts become better informed of best practices and industry standards across the country related to safety and security. So when it comes to determining needs, there are a number of options available. One is that you can conduct your own assessments, and there are a number of resources available to you. You can find some checklists and associated trainings One place to find those is through ACEF, and the link there is on the slide for you. There are also some federal resources that are free as well, and they include assessments and assessment information related to both K-12 as well as higher education. The U.S. Department of Ed has a resource that helps schools select an appropriate assessment tool. And using the appropriate tool is critical in this process. That resource is called the Guide to School Vulnerability Assessment, Key Principles for Safe Schools. And it also is available at rems.ed.gov, rems.ed.gov. In addition, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security offers assessments as well. And then there are new federal guides for developing high-quality emergency operations plans that, can help you take the information from the assessment and turn it into a comprehensive plan. Those resources that help support the federal guides, including assessment, can also be found at rems.ed.gov under Guide K-12. So, having talked through the planning process and having gone through the step of understanding the situation fully through conducting a threat and vulnerability assessment, you're now at the point where you're ready to determine your goals and objectives as well as your security priorities. Once you've identified the goals and objectives and clearly identified the priorities, you're at the point now where you're ready to begin to develop the plan. And as part of developing the plan, you're going to want to identify the strategies and courses of action, associated timelines, estimated cost, as well as identifying any other necessary resources for implementing the plan. So in terms of strategies for each of the goals and objectives you've identified, you're going to want to develop strategies that can be tied and are critical to actually implementing those goals. You really, when it comes to timelines, you can establish timelines related to each of the strategies, and then from there build up to develop an overall timeline related to each goal and objective. But it's going to be important that those timelines are realistic. Sometimes we think we can do things faster than we actually can. And it's important to really be thoughtful about establishing timelines. And the same with estimating cost. In terms of estimating cost, if you can get as close as you can to the actual cost, it's going to be able to help you go back and look at your priorities again in relation to the overall budget that's available to you. Other resources that are going to be critical for implementing the plan will include personnel, and they may include, for example, specific strategies related to assignment of personnel, training, that kind of thing. All of those are other resources that may come into play in developing the plan. And again, when it comes to plan implementation and maintenance, you're going to want to look at issues of equity district-wide or campus-wide within your system. And you're going to find some differences between new construction and existing buildings and renovation. As technology changes, districts may find situations in which security measures and technology in new buildings are more robust than security and measures and technology in existing buildings. And as this happens, you will need to evaluate the potential gaps in security technology and look for ways to address those gaps. And this needs to be part of the ongoing plan evaluation. The multidisciplinary planning team is going to want to consider, is it best to upgrade the security technology at existing buildings Are there other security measures that can help to address any inequities in school security technology and standards between the buildings? And then as buildings are renovated, districts will want to take advantage of the construction process to upgrade security technology in existing buildings to help ensure that there are fewer inequity and gaps in security across buildings within the district. So that brings us to the end kind of our planned presentation today. Are there any questions that we can help address for you based on our discussion? Okay, I do see one question, and the question I see, are any one of the layers or is any one of the layers of security more important than another? And the answer to that really is no. Hopefully in our discussion today, we've helped you be able to see that they are all equally important in developing a comprehensive and effective school security strategy. In our experience in working with K-12 and higher ed and conducting threat and vulnerability assessments, we have really discovered that the human factors play a major role in enhancing the safety and security in school buildings. They have the greatest potential to mitigate threats, but their effectiveness also relies on all of the other security measures that we mentioned, physical, natural, and technology, in order to make them more effective. Okay, so I see a second question, that what are some of the disciplines that are often overlooked and not included in the multidisciplinary team, and who should be included that we often forget? And Tony may wish to comment on this as well, but I would say, even though it seems obvious, IT seems to be a department that is often forgotten in the multidisciplinary planning team. Certainly you're going to want to have construction services and or facilities involved on the multidisciplinary planning team, but you may also want to include folks from your instructional technology department. Many times you can build on the technology infrastructure designed to support both classroom instructional technology and utilize it to support your security technology as well. And then I would also say, don't forget to include the end users, and that can be teachers, administrators, and perhaps even sometimes students on the multidisciplinary team, because they will have a tremendous amount of insight in how the building is actually utilized, what goes on in the building, maybe things that were planned well, things that were not planned well and need to be addressed in other ways. That's basically my answer to that. Tony, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you nailed it. I think all of those folks should have some involvement.
Okay, so I see a third question now, and this is an excellent one. How do we make security a budgetary priority? And again, I'm sure Tony will have a comment on this as well, but what we find as we work with schools and higher ed across the country is that many times in the budget process, security becomes less of a priority, or seems to be less of a priority. So this is one of the reasons why we recommend that the multidisciplinary team be involved in planning for new construction and renovations from the very beginning of the process, and that they continue to be involved as design decisions are made. As many of you know, throughout the design process and sometimes even the construction process, decisions are made for various reasons that have an impact on security technology and security measures. So it's important to keep that team involved. And another effective means of ensuring that security is a priority is to establish a set of district or system-wide design criteria and guidelines in each of the 4 layers of security that we talked about, the natural, physical, human, and technology layers. And it will be important that these guidelines correlate with comprehensive security policies for the district or the system as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mindy. I think it's like you said, very early it's very important to early in the process identify what the security needs and priorities are and what the expectations are. A lot of times in new construction, there's a pre-design process, and a lot of times budgets are kind of determined at that point. And if the security planner is not involved in that, then sometimes the budget just isn't there. So it's very important to identify the costs of the security systems very early in the project, so that those costs can be identified and captured up front.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions at this point, but we definitely want to thank you, Tony and I both, for joining us today, and we hope that this has been beneficial to you. But in the meantime, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to close the presentation, and I believe that that ACEF actually has some additional information for the participants. So we will turn it back over to them. Again, thank you so very much.
ACEF would like to extend a very special thank you to our presenters, Ms. Mindy Sitton and Mr. Tony Chanowski, and our participants for joining our webinar today. We hope that you took this opportunity to learn from the content presented, engaged with the speaker, and will use this content to advance your professional knowledge on issues related to school security technology infrastructures. Please join us again soon for upcoming ACEF events.